idea that we're not engaged is just simply not there. And initially, there was not a request for me to go out, even before I was heading over to Kyiv. I've spoken with every official in Ohio, Democrat and Republican, on a continuous basis, as in Pennsylvania, and I will be on here. I haven't had the occasion to go to East Palestine. There's a lot going on here, and I just haven't been able to break. I was thinking whether I'd go to East Palestine this week, but I then was reminded I've got to go literally around the world.
President Biden under scrutiny once again for his comments on East Palestine, the small Ohio town that was devastated by a train derailment that spewed toxic chemicals. The president said he hasn't had the occasion to go, yet still found time to vacation in Lake Tahoe and retreat to his Delaware home several times over the past month. Let's bring in Republican Congressman for Ohio Bill Johnson and East Palestine business owner and resident Lisa Hamner. Thank you both for coming on. We very much appreciate it. Congressman, to you first. The president, as you heard there, has said several times that he would go to East Palestine at some point. He would go when the time is right. I mean, he's taken about 75 vacation days so far this year. What do you make of when the time is right?
Well, I can tell you the president promised early on that he was going to go to East Palestine. And isn't it interesting, Tracy? He doesn't even know how to pronounce the name of the town. It's not East Palestine. It's East Palestine. And if he'd been there, he would know that. But it's not just vacation time that he's taking and not showing up. He had time to go to Philadelphia when the bridge collapsed. He had time, although it was a delay, to go to Florida and then to Maui. And he should have gone to those places. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but he shouldn't promise the people of East Palestine that he's coming and then never show up. And so far, that's been what he's done.
Yeah, it really has. And Lisa, to you, The Guardian wrote the following, and this was a month ago they wrote this, but I think it still applies. The headline is, "It feels like an apocalyptic movie, life in East Palestine 6 months after the toxic train crash." The body goes on to say residents there say state and federal officials have downplayed residents' concerns and potential health threats and sometimes offer contradicting information that has generated deep mistrust. And residents say there is a sense of being left on their own. Is there more that you would add to that quote, Lisa?
I think there's a tremendous amount of information, and there's a lot of information that conflicts with what the EPA releases. People do private tests, and with social media, that just confuses the issue. There's no one voice telling people that the water's safe, what direction we're going in, and that just creates more chaos.
Yeah, the chaos really is all around you. When we talk to people out there, every so often we check in. Some believe, Congressman, that because he can't blame this on, I don't know, climate change or whatever, that it's not politically beneficial for him to go. Do you buy into that, or is he just not taking the time to actually go and see what's happening?
Look, I can tell you that I think some of it is absolutely political. Ohio is a Republican trending state. This is a deeply Republican and conservative area here. So I think politics do come into play. And, you know, there is a lot of concern. And this is far from over. And as I have shared with Lisa and the other residents of East Palestine, this is not over until they say that it's over. I was there and practically lived there for the 3 weeks after the derailment when we were not in session. And I'm there every single week when I'm not in Washington, D.C. I'm back there checking on not only Lisa, but other businesses, and to see how the cleanup and the removal of the contamination is going. But we're a long way from finished with this project. And the people there still have concerns, and every concern that they have should be taken seriously.
And I want to know, Lisa, what does the president need to see? We're seeing pictures on the right-hand side of the screen. What does he need to see? What does he need to know? What do you need to tell him?
I think he needs to look at that note that the governor sent him, asking him to make the declaration for our town. There's a tremendous amount he can do from Washington to help the village of East Palestine, our businesses, and our residents. He doesn't even have to make the trip
But what does he need to, do you think he needs to know exactly what's happening in East Palestine that he's not recognizing?
I mean, I think everybody in the world knows what's going on in East Palestine. It's been well covered. If the governor is asking you to make the declaration to make resources available to us, that should be where you focus, not on a plane ticket here.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Lisa, Congressman, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.